There are many things from which I might have derived good, by which I have not profited, I dare say. Christmas among the rest. But I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time when it come around, apart from the veneration due to its sacred name and origin, if anything belonging to it can be apart from that, as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. The only time I know of in the long calendar of the year when men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely and to think of people below them as if they were fellow passengers to the grave and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good and will do me good. And I say, God bless it. I still have a little bit of a cold and a muggy head, so I hope the message I want to convey is not interfered with by that. I also have a hoarse throat, so my apologies. It is very cold where I am, as you can see from my breath, as I record this video, which is in, ultimately, my garden shed. That's where I'm sitting right now. But at this time of the year, I receive a lot of messages, not only this year, but other years, asking about Christmas and God and the presence of God, and what I know about this. A lot of these messages come from a space of fear, actually. Many fear that it is somehow offensive to God to celebrate Christmas. Many fear that they are being lured into a celebration which is incorrect. Some feel it has demonic influence. Others feel it's pagan, etc. And so I wanted to share everything as a human organism sitting here talking I have gone through in relationship to these holidays, and not only Christmas, but focused on Christmas. In a few weeks, billions of people will celebrate the birth of Christ. Whatever that means to you is not important. The birth of Christ for some is a historical character. For others, it's about the birth of the Christic elements and the compassionate parts of the Christic inside the human story today. What the story is, if you look at it regardless of if you look at it historically or the internal birth of the Christ, it's a story of hope. It's the hope of the birth of a love without condition, the birth of a compassion that knows no depths, that can go deeper than we can ever fall. It is the birth of a profound light and hope. This is what the celebration is. Some will celebrate it historically, some will celebrate it as the internal Christ. Wherever it is, they deep down are celebrating hope. The hope for a love without condition, for a perfect union between the divine and we mere humans, and to be able to see that manifest in the human story. This is what the holiday is supposed to be about. This is what this celebration is supposed to be about. For others, and the vast majority, we've gotten a little bit tangled up in consumerism. We know this. Consumerism is a big part of the human story at this time. And it is an issue inside Christmas time, and something that we have to address and we have to counteract and counterbalance. And many children will be celebrating and excited about the imagined story of Santa Claus, derived from a great human being, Saint Nicholas, from all I have read about him. And so this tradition and this sense of magic and make-believe we give to children, is that harmful or not, is again something we have to explore. But beyond there, others will celebrate the winter solstice, for the winter solstice is undoubtedly why we are celebrating the birth of Christ, this birth of an unconditioned love and the hope that brings on Christmas Day. It's due to the precession, the winter solstice, the movement of the sun in the sky. The reality is that many listening will now probably want to apply a dualistic consciousness and listen for historical anecdotes or religious information. But I care only about this, in truth, and that is the peace of Christ being with you right here, right now. The peace and the love of God and Christ here, now, with you, right now. Not in the future, not in a special occasion, not on a special day, but right here with you. And if we cannot find that here today, then it's very important that we do. Because if we cannot today, right now, have the actual living presence, breathing and moving in our heart of the love and peace of Christ, then this is where these holidays can become frightening. They can, because we lose track. All I have seen over the years, by staying in that presence of God, staying in that stillness, in the peace that surpasses all understanding, which is to see the world without language and memory, as I often say, in that space, in emptiness, without any paraphernalia that's spiritual, scientific or religious, a direct union between your heart and the unknowable love of God, the unknowable God and that love which is knowable from the unknowable God. That is the importance. That is the union that matters above all unions. When we go into these holidays and you have fear that God will judge you for making a mistake by putting a Christmas tree in your home, and you fear God will think that you are doing some form of idol worship, I guarantee that presence has not been accessed, because perfect love casts out fear. And perfect love is known when the veil of thought, which is where our fears are born, is silenced. And it is silenced, and the presence of Christ is with us in that silent-minded state. This is where it comes from. This is where it is born with us. And so if you fear that, as it says biblically, you see in Jeremiah that if you cut down a tree and put it in your home, that it's idol worship. But actually, originally, it's speaking of carving the wood to form a wooden idol. Idol worship, very important. That's what it's referencing. Christian families around the world, they are not worshipping their Christmas tree. They are not. However, many are in idol worship this Christmas, and this is why we all must go into Christmas and these seasons understanding the presence is now. Christmas Day is a time to feast and celebrate with your family. If you go into that knowing that this is an opportunity for you to bring forward the joy, the peace, the love of God that you know here and now, that you get to bring that to your loved ones, including the wisdom that God brings you, including the miraculous events that walking with God this past year have allowed you to store as memories and share with your loved ones. If you sit down and approach Christmas ready, filled with joy and hope and peace, and excited by the opportunity to share that with those that you love, then you will be fine. But if you sit here today and you have an expectation that that day will give you that joy, herein we have the problem. That is where the issue comes for we humans. We always are looking to the future. This special day will give me it. Beyond there, it's likewise with the idol of consumerism. The idol of consumerism is something we were all subjected to. Our children, we must be cautious with who we are individually and with our children with this. Because our children need to know, as we need to know, receiving a gift is wonderful. It's joyous, it's fun. Giving gifts is wonderful, it's joyous, it's fun. But we must understand and we must teach our children, I know this to be fact by now, that your joy must be so potent. The presence of God is that joy. So potent, the peace of Christ so powerful with you as your highest joy, that you are aware that no material gift or goods is going to affect that. It may allow you to expand and enjoy your joy with others and share it. Share your love for another by giving them a gift and receive it with gratitude when someone gives you a gift. But if you are expecting your gifts to bring you that joy, you have entered the problem state. And this is where idol worship comes in. You can worship the idol of Christmas expecting the material goods to make you happy. And all of a sudden, 1 week after Christmas, you have a new list of the bottomless pit of desire that humans have that you need to find your happiness again. If you are approaching this holiday knowing I have the love, the peace, the joy of God with me, and I can receive a gift and it will be blessed to be around and with me, but it isn't going to bring me my joy. It might make me happy, it might give me some pleasure, and that is okay, but it is not going to change anything about the wholeheartedness of the presence of God. For God first. God first, and God first is that presence whereby which we see the world without language and memory. It is that state where the veil of thought goes quiet. There we have direct union with that loving presence of God, the peace of Christ. When you're looking for your gifts to give you your joy, you are in a dangerous predicament. When you look to the future and want that day to satiate a void of joy and presence with you, you have a problem. Find that joy today. It is here, it is now, and by God's grace it is given to you. For you are forgiven here and now, you are loved here and now, and through no efforts of the character of your mind, your personality, and its analysis, by no effort is it earned. It is earned by the silencing of that character. And the character can't silence itself. It only happens in a humble surrender, on your knees before all of creation and its creator, saying, my life is yours. Not that it was my life to give. This organism belongs silently to the all. This is how it is. The life can't be given because it was always belonging. The peace of God was always with, constantly. It's just we were running a program in the mind that made us forget it, separate from it. But it was always there beneath it. And so, for those who fear that it's pagan, as I say, perfect love casts out fear. God is not a monster like this. This is a broken notion of God. And it's easily forgiven that people have that. For the Old Testament God was very brutal. But if we are to believe that was God, then know this. The Old Testament God judged and punished, apparently, but also said that a sacrifice ended all of that in his Son. And so we can psychologically let go of judgment and punishment. God loves you. You are forgiven. You just by grace have to accept that love to yourself. Have to accept that forgiveness and forgive yourself as you do. When you have fear, the devil plays in the mind. When children are in a state of thanksgiving for this season, and they are giving love, decorating a tree, and excited about all that's going on, when somebody comes into that room and says, this is demonic, it's pagan, the only place the devil is at work, in that state of thanksgiving where nobody is being hurt, where children are having fun, God is happiest when his children are at play, the only place the devil is working in that room is the human who walks in and starts condemning it and judging it and trying to make people afraid, trying to make people believe that God is going to somehow not like them or not love them, because they are decorating a tree, because of something they read in the Old Testament, because they believe it's a pagan holiday and therefore it should not be celebrated. It's opposed to the Christ. The only place the devil there is working is in the fear of the mind of the one espousing it and any whose others' minds he affects with it, he or she affects with it. And you do infect people with your fear. So we must be cautious of it. We must be cautious because there is a great many psyops on the internet and a great deal of collective paranoia on the internet. Everything can be a nefarious conspiracy. And it's not always so. For God's love and glory is known in the intention of a man's heart, in a child's heart. It is known in the intention. If the intention is not to harm one another, all is well. If you have replaced God with the worship of consumerism, you must balance that. You must remember to teach your children well, to teach yourself well, that if I don't feel my joy now, I'm not going to feel it from that item. If I can feel full joy here and now, then anything I receive can be enjoyed and it can be brilliant, but it's not going to bring me my joy, for my joy is in God, here and now. God first, in the presence, in the stillness, the natural stillness, where the veil of thought of who you thought you were gives up and the heart returns back to God, instead of it being imprisoned underneath the thoughts and the worries and the fears, such as the fear of such a wonderful holiday. The birth of Yeshua on Christmas Day is no doubt influenced by the astrological followings of man. Once over as humans, we had access more effortlessly to virgin consciousness, to look out at the world without carrying a lot of knowledge of the world. And so we would look out and see the stars. We would see the movements in the skies. There was no heavy entertainment. Our entertainment was the movement of nature. We would look out and we saw the solstice coming, and a time of great importance. And at this time of the year, there is a certain spirit, a lightness. And I wonder if it's ancestrally passed on at that time where we needed a little more sharing, a little more tolerance, a little more love, because we knew we had to gather together around the fire to survive the winter. But we would look. And originally we just knew that the sun was going to pass through the crux, the crucifix in the sky, rest in the bowels of the earth, the winter solstice, and resurrect again on Christmas Day. We knew that was coming, and as the sun resurrected Christmas Day, it's joyful, because now we're heading back to the time of being able to grow our food, etc., and have warmth and less struggle as we have in the winter time. We observed it, and we had no stories at first, no labels, but stories have been built around that endlessly. And the mystic writers of Christianity, I am certain, included this somehow, in some which way. And it doesn't detract from Yeshua. It doesn't detract from his message. For the Spirit of truth is Christ. We should not turn our back on obvious truth. It's important. It's important. It connects us to our ancestry. We understand the human story better when we see this. And so this is where a lot of that comes from. I mentioned that before. But I mentioned there that there's a certain spirit. And as this human sitting here, I have been very blessed to see the goodness of humanity doing what I do with my life. That which God called me to do has put me in the centre of a great deal of miraculous love and sharing in this world for children people might never ever meet, and yet they choose to love them. And I'm very honoured and blessed to be the guardian of these children and to have started this family. But I can tell you over the years that at Christmas time there has always been that little bit more sharing, generosity and open-heartedness. And I don't know where that spirit comes from, but it is there. And it is a new open-heartedness. And it seems to come at this magical time of the year. And even the other day I was at a Christmas parade, a very worldly, stimulating, sensory event with my children. But the energy, as a man who is so sensitive to energies around me, was so wonderful. It was so perfect, and I knew that God was rejoicing there. Even if people weren't shouting, praise God, their hearts were shouting it, for frequency is the language of God. Give thanks, rejoice in your suffering. Why? Because God needs that frequency of thanksgiving and rejoicing for you to overcome the struggles that you face in this world. God needs it. It's part of the workings of your power, of your union as a son and daughter of God, of prayer. And I could feel it. I could feel the elevated. But if someone were to come in there and start to say, this is demonic, this is evil, the devil is working in that heavy vibration in people. And we have to get out of this religious mindset and move into a spiritual. Christ was a spiritual path. Christianity is a supernatural life if it is lived correctly. It is not a heavy life of condemnation. It's a supernatural life of love and compassion. And so Christmas, from all I have gone through, is not something to be feared unless you are not in the presence. For perfect love casts out fear, and presence is that perfect love, to return to the essential nature of all that you are, the truth of what you are, beneath the veil of thought. If you say, how do I get there? The one asking is the veil of thought asking. Let it go. Let it go. It sounds more simple than it is. It sounds too simple to be true, but it is that simple. For by grace is where you meet the presence, where you meet the peace of Christ. And that grace means that there's no analysis and searching. There's no effort. It's a return here and now. And if you have that here and now, be excited for Christmas, a chance to share the joy you feel here and now with your loved ones. But if you are saying Christmas Day will bring me that peace and joy, check the way by which you're functioning in this world, because this is going to create an issue when we idolize time as the one who will bring us the cookie. Before I go, I would like to read a passage from a well-known book, and many have seen movies about it, and that is The Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, or The Story of Ebenezer Scrooge. Because there is a passage in here from the nephew, Fred, of Ebenezer, and I think it summarises this beautifully. What is the truth between God and Christmas? The truth is summed up by Fred, and I'll read it now. There are many things from which I might have derived good, by which I have not profited, I dare say, Christmas among the rest. But I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time, when it come around, apart from the veneration due to its sacred name and origin, if anything belonging to it can be apart from that, as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. The only time I know of, in the long calendar of the year, when men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely, and to think of people below them as if they were fellow passengers to the grave, and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good and will do me good. And I say, God bless it. This is how I see Christmas. For God's love is not moved by our errors if we are to put up a tree and God's going to judge you for this. This is not how it is. God doesn't look upon you and say, oh, you've done this holiday, it's pagan, I judge you for... You were forgiven. Move on from that. The reality is that God's love is for all of us. But it's not for all of us in the future. It's for all of us right here, right now, in the awakened state, in the presence of the peace of Christ. Born from virgin consciousness, consciousness that does not know like a child. Just as Christ was born from a virgin, the Christic qualities of love and the presence of Christ which gives birth to those in you happens from your virgin consciousness, here and now. And here and now, as you look out and you know gifts are coming and you know you're going to give gifts, you may take pleasure from them, but know that they will not fill any joy, for God is the only place you will get that joy and that contentment and that wholeness. And teach your children that, and know that. This is the greatest gift I can share all year round and Christmas, is the presence of God. And the presence, we can enjoy a feast, we can enjoy party time, socializing, but we must take that presence into it. We must take our joy into it and not expect it to give us the joy. I think I covered what I wanted to say. That was all. God bless, guys. We love you all.